And then, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the September 29th, 2020 zoning amendment workshop of the Rollinsford Planning Board. I'm going to begin by reading the Town of Rollinsford Right to Know meeting checklist. As chair of the Rollinsford Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, in accordance with Governor Smenu's Emergency Order 12, pursuant to Emergency Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Google Hangouts platform for the electronic meeting. All members of the board will have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Google Hangouts platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-617-675-444 with a PIN of 182-740-615-6390. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting, and it's not really a meeting, by the way, it's a workshop. Using Google Hangouts, and instructions are provided on the website, town website at rollinsford.nh.us. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please call 534-1049 or email at admin@rollinsford.nh.us. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event and again, it's a workshop, not a meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the workshop, we will adjourn the workshop and have it scheduled at that time, I think. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting. Well, there won't be any votes because it's not a meeting. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and read the entire checklist. Please note that all votes that are taken during this workshop shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the workshop by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. So, having said that, I'm going to do a roll call. Is Kevin Haynes present, Vice Chair?
Present and alone, Chairman Hinsman.
Thank you. Is Caroline Kendall present?
I am present and alone, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is Richard, and Richard, your last name escapes me at this second. I'm apologize to say, are you present? Is anyone in the room with you?
Mr. Chairman, I am present and I am alone, and it's Fogarty.
You know, that's what I wanted to say, but I didn't want to err. All right.
Just remember, it's the restaurant.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And I believe that's it for our members tonight. Is that right, Caroline?
That is right for tonight, yes. Soon
Okay.
Stasi may be joining us, but she's going to be a little late, I think, if she does.
All right. So next item on our workshop would be discussion of potential revisions to the zoning ordinances to be proposed by the planning board and to be approved by the voters of town meeting in March of 2021. Feel free, anyone, to join in or to start off the conversation.
Well, I have one.
Mr. Clark. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure. I don't think I sent this. I'm just realizing I don't think I sent this to anybody. made a draft after your suggestion, Mr. Chairman, last month of the amendment to take the multifamily use out of the SR and CR zones. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna send it right now. I'm sorry I haven't done this.
Is everyone able to access that, folks, in the plan, on the meeting? Can you see that? You have access to your email?
I can project it if people want to read it via my screen. I'll pull it up.
That would probably be best.
Okay. Just bear with me a second here. What's your bird's name, John?
I was just saying to myself, I've got to put him in another room, and I actually have two birds. You can only hear one. The bird you can hear, and I'll move him in a second to another room. He's, and I apologize for that. His name is Archie. He is a red-bellied parrot, if you decide to look at what that looks like online. So again, I apologize for that. I'm going to move him right now.
Oh, you don't need to.
So, and Tom, just to clarify, as I read the header of this, and not to get ahead of the meeting, but is this just a matter of clarifying and consistency to make sure that everything matches through here, or are you suggesting, removing these uses from a certain zoning?
Well, excuse me. As we discovered a while ago in 2008, there was a vote already to remove the allowed uses. So they were eliminated from the table of use regulations, but there's these subsequent notes and the special provisions were still there. So the whole idea here is to just make this consistent with those changes that was approved at the town meeting back in 2008.
So it is just a matter of making things consistent like we've done in past years with wording and definitions, correct?
Correct, yes. This is nothing new, right?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Caroline, maybe I'm having a problem, but is there a way that we can see? I can only see through the word background. Okay, thank you.
I did send it out.
Yes, all right, thank you. Do any members that want to comment on that or have some discussions of that?
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow, it might be a good idea for Tom to reiterate his proposal. We have Sue Nastasi and Harry Knowles now.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. I just sent out a proposed amendment to the special provisions in section 8.1, because back in 2008, a town meeting was approved to eliminate multifamily uses in the SR and CR zoning districts. So that was taken out, they were taken out of the table of use regulations, but due to a subsequent proposal very recently, we found that these footnotes were still there, which would indicate you can still do this. But after discussing it with legal counsel, we felt it was just an oversight. So this proposed amendment is just to correct the notes and the special provisions to be consistent with the table of use regulations, wherein the these uses are not allowed and have not been for 12 years.
Okay.
So this is just a good cleanup mechanism to get all of our regs consistent, or get the ideology consistent in all the places where it's mentioned.
All right. Does anyone want to comment any more on that, or? I think I'm hearing no.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for your efforts. They are appreciated. I'm going to bring up a subject, and I wish I could say I had the site for it, but I don't, for discussion, and that is, it occurs to me we've had discussion in prior years about an amendment to the longevity of a site plan that is approved but not
Yes.
any progress made on. And if someone could, Tom, I'm going to maybe look to you or Caroline. I don't care who goes first. Is to one of you or both of you might refresh my memory as to where that would be in the ordinance and so forth. I'd be happy to sit back and listen.
I am glad you said that, Mr. Chairman, because that was one of the amendments that I know I made a note somewhere, I couldn't find it, and I was frantically searching, but to tie into your comment, this is to do with the zoning ordinance, not site plan or subdivision yet. Yeah, we'll get to those. But I found in the zoning ordinance, excuse me, there's a provision that seems pretty strict that if you get a variance and do not act on it within 1 year, you lose it. I think it's RSA 674-39 was saying that you could have, this is all, now this is inclusive of zoning, site plan, and subdivision. They're valid for 4 years, I think. Up, they might have changed it to 5, but I know it's at least 4 years. So if you have your approval, you have 4 years to act on it, whether it's a site plan, a subdivision plan, or a variance. And I definitely would recommend that we at least change the zoning ordinance to that, because 1 year is pretty strict. Not many people, once they get the variance, they have to get the building permit. They have to do the work, because there's a subsequent provision in this that says, if you start within 1 year but don't finish within 2, then you lose the variance. So therein we might have a case of someone that, for whatever reason, the cost of building products may have started a house and not able to finish it, and then they lose the variance and have to come back to the zoning board. I will find where it says that. And then
There's also to elaborate on what you're saying, Tom. People might be required to go to the planning board after getting a variance, also, which would really narrow that timeline, window of opportunity for them.
Good point.
Tom, but are you suggesting that we match the 4 year span as opposed to the 1 year span? Is that your suggestion?
Yes, at least that. I'm gonna have to look up the RSA while we're looking here, and because I know it's at least 4 years. It may have been increased to 5.
But I think that's a lot more realistic than 1 year with a completion upon 2.
Oh man, where is it?
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
So in RSA 674 semicolon or colon 33, down under IA, it says it should be valid if exercised within 2 years from the date of final approval.
2?
Yeah. Beep, 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 beep. So I don't, and this is under the local land use planning and regulatory powers chapter of the RSAs.
While you're there, could you look at 67439?
Which one?
I thought that was the 4-year exemption.
67439.
Yes,
That says something about a 5-year exemption.
that's the one I thought that applied to site review and, the site plans and subdivision plans.
Yes. That's weird because the one contradicts the other.
Yeah.
Man, where the hell?
So RSA 674:39, Roman 1A, says that essentially, if you have a subdivision that's approved by the planning board and properly recorded, it's exempt from any subsequent changes in the subdivision regulations, site plan regulations, impact fee ordinances, etc., for a period of 5 years, provided that one, active and substantial improvement or development has occurred within 24 months.
Okay.
Well, that's really the real, I think, essential part to that.
Yeah, I think that must relate back to 67433 with the 2 years that Sarah mentioned. And we do have that definition of substantial development already in the ordinance.
All right, and that would be in the definition section, I assume.
Yes, sir.
So is that I don't know if my book is the most recent one. Is that 2.60? No, I don't think it is.
Tell me again where it is in the ordinance.
Oh, I found it.
I didn't know if it was 2.60.
I'm not sure what you're referring to there, the 2.6.
I may have it outdated. I'm going to go to the town website. Where do you find it at, Tom?
Okay, in the zoning ordinance, section 11, 11.2, .9. Then the 674.
So 9 talks about the 1 year, right?
Right.
And I thought I heard you say, Tom, that you found a definition of substantial compliance. Excuse me, that's not the right term.
Oh, that's, I'm sorry. Yes, okay, yes.
Substantial completion.
Mhm.
Yes, it's, wait a second. I'm sorry, yes, what you said was correct, 2.60, substantial improvement. I'm pretty sure that's the most recent version.
So substantial improvement means substantial completion. And I guess I'm wondering about that because
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure the terms are interchangeable, but I guess I would have to get verification.
I think we should perhaps look into that because again, 11.29 uses the term substantially completed, and the definition section of 2.6 says substantial improvement.
Yep, yes, sir. So I will follow up on this right away and then propose one has to be changed or not, correct?
It would seem to me, Tom, that's correct, unless this substantial improvement clause has something to do with something else in the ordinance,
That's
in the ordinances. And the way it reads, I'm going to go ahead and read this for the rest of the group here in case they don't have it in front of them. 2.60 defines substantial improvement as any combination of repairs, reconstruction, alteration, or improvement to a structure which the cumulative cost equals or exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure. The market value of the structure should equal 1, the appraised value prior to the start of the initial repair or improvement, or 2, in the case of damage, the value of the structure prior to the damage occurring. Without reading it further, Tom, I almost think that clause would appear to me as to being something along akin to I'm trying to think of what it would be akin to. I'm almost thinking of like in a lease, if a certain percentage of the property can't be, repaired, then, either the lessor or the lessee is allowed to get out of the lease. I'm not sure that would seem to be consistent with the other part where the the ordinance we're talking about.
Yeah. Reading it more carefully, I have to agree. It looks like it refers to like permit activity, perhaps, not necessarily plan approval.
Well, it in any case, it looks like 11.2.9 is not in compliance with the RSA because we're saying if change is not substantially completed, whereas the RSA just says if work or change has not commenced in a meaningful way. So our ordinance here is at in my opinion, is at odds with what the RSA says.
Yes.
And the 5 years, I think, is up to the board whether they want to grant that or not, that extension. But in any case, like work has had to begin to grant that extension.
Well, doesn't it say though you have the 5 years if you do substantial completion within 2? So that appears to take it out.
Active and substantial development or building has begun on the site in interest. On here, I'm like just paraphrasing. You have to have active and substantial development within 24 months after the date of approval, or in accordance with the terms of approval to qualify for this 5-year exemption.
So if I may interject, I think it is really important to understand the statute, but at the same time, I think, as far as this conversation goes, maybe the point is that we need to revise 11.9.2 or whatever that section is to reflect, whatever it is according to RSA, whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
excellent
Just so
summation.
that they're tied, so that we don't have to continue to wonder if we're in compliance.
We need to figure that out. I agree.
Trying to find the definition of that in the RSA, of active and substantial completion in the RSA.
I was trying to do the same thing.
If this becomes burdensome, then Tom, if you give me, the definition of substantial completion and whatever else might be troubling to figure out, we can send an email to the Municipal Association for clarification, rather than
Yes, yes.
going down a wormhole that may not be quite right.
Excellent idea. I'll do that tomorrow.
All right.
Can we put in can I interject here for just a moment? May I interject?
Please.
Absolutely.
Because, we're talking about substantial improvement. Can we just put a percentage on it? Something like 50%, or as opposed to, because substantial could mean anything. Some people
I
could
think
say,
we have to figure out what it means. Like, the law may define it as Tom suggested, or it may not, in which case, if the law doesn't define it, then I agree with you, Richard, it might be worth defining, but we can't define it if it is already defined in law.
oh, so we just don't know that fact yet.
Right.
Got it.
Man, it shouldn't be this tough.
Yeah, so let's just email them, and I'm glad we're having this meeting now, so we have plenty of time left on the calendar to work out the bugs and get our language figured out.
Yes.
So do we want to talk about the site plan approval also, or we're going to look, we've already raised that enough, we don't need to talk about it
Yes,
anymore?
I think, yes. Of course, the site plan, the site regs and the subdivision regs is under the jurisdiction of the planning board, so it doesn't have to go to public hearing, but to town meeting, but yes, we should include those as well, I think.
I think we're overdue for a review of site plan and subdivision for things that probably need to be revised. They may be worthy of their own processes or own workshops. I think it would be helpful, Tom, if you would keep track of what we think needs revision as they come up in each of those regulations. But I think it's worth everybody having a read to make sure, and bringing back questions. Does this make sense? Does it have to be this way? What if it were different? And
Right.
Coming up with suggestions for revisions of each of those in a more comprehensive approach, I think.
Yes, good point.
That would just be my suggestion if the group is willing to do that. The zoning ordinance is more timely, as Tom suggested, because it is subject to town meeting. So we're early on our timeline, but we are on a schedule to have our public hearings and whatever we have to do in order to get these things on the ballot for March. Whereas subdivision and site plan we can handle at the convenience of the board. But I think it's important to have them on our radar also. Like zoning ordinance gets flagged for us because we have the town meeting process, but we get caught up in our cases and status quo and haven't really put on our agenda to be thoughtful about those things in a while.
Correct.
All right, so are we on to the next topic, or, I mean, idea for zoning? I don't want to, reason I asked that, I'm sorry, I was reading something as you folks were speaking, so forgive my attention for me being a bit diverted.
As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman, we can move on, but I would encourage people to, if this sounds like a workable process, maybe board members will look through the zoning ordinance and consider what we've discussed tonight and look and see what other suggestions or problematic items they can come up with. And maybe we can add this. I don't want to say to the October meeting. I don't know if we're going to be hearing the junkyard and what else might come on our agenda for October. But so whether it be at the October meeting or another workshop potentially in October, we could regroup and finalize desire for the board about how we want to move forward for March.
Sure. And by the way, I wasn't suggesting that we hurry along the whole workshop tonight. I was just didn't know if there's any more discussion.
Oh, all right.
We had to have about the variance timeline or the site plan approval timeline. I'll jump in again, and I'm reminded in what I was doing as the discussion was going on, as I was looking at some of my zoning board correspondence. And Caroline, as you might recall, there was at least one member of the zoning board that asked us to look at the issue of detached accessory dwelling units.
Yes, that's a good thing too. Yeah, I remember I was on an email thread about ADUs, and we did revise our the section of the zoning ordinance around ADUs to be compliant with the changes in state law. But there was a feeling amongst the board, the ZBA board, that perhaps we should, I guess, reevaluate whether or not we should not allow detached dwellings. Currently, the ordinance says they must be connected to the primary dwelling. So is that your understanding, Mr. Chairman, about the desire or feeling of the zoning board?
So looking back at the correspondence that you're on, Caroline, and Chairman Putnam said, quote, I think the question relates to the treatment of detached ADUs, accessory dwelling units. The town could consider going beyond what the statute requires so they could get out of the business of considering variances for detached ADUs. I'm not convinced the town should have such an ordinance, but that's something the Planning and Zoning Adjustment Board should discuss or could discuss at a joint meeting if they decide to hold one. And there hasn't been a joint meeting, but just refreshing my memory as to what that issue was back then. And I don't think I've got any further comments other than bring that to the attention of the board here tonight.
As I recall, in the ordinance, it prohibits the detached, an ADU in a detached structure unless the detached structure is older than or was existing prior to the adoption of the ordinance. Is that correct, Caroline? Does that sound right?
I don't know if it says that specifically, but it does say it has to be at least prior to the proposal of the ADU. It has to be a pre-existing structure. You're not, in other words, you are not going to build a detached garage with an ADU above it.
Right.
That part is clear, but if you already have a detached garage, perhaps whether or not you can build an ADU on top of that I'm not quite sure of. It's just clear that you cannot build the detached structure.
Yeah, if there is a specific provision that says accessory dwelling shall be allowed in a detached accessory structure that is in existence prior to the adoption of this ordinance, provided the following conditions are found to exist. And it just has three conditions. I think my point is that if it's in there, that we cannot have them in a detached structure. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, that we can say that people can't ask for a variance from that.
I
Well,
think,
yeah.
and maybe I'm misreading the point of Chairman Putnam's email, but I thought he was suggesting that there be a change in the zoning ordinance so that you wouldn't have to get a variance for detached ADUs.
Got it.
And
I'm sorry.
well, no, don't say sorry. I mean, you're going off of what I'm reading as opposed to seeing it in writing. So, but that was, and so the case that the zoning board was presented with and ultimately approved, although some members or one member in particular thought it shouldn't have been approved, was the construction of an ADU above to be a newly constructed garage in Rollinsford, and that variance was granted with certain conditions. But I think the issue raised by Charlie Putnam was whether we might want to consider a change so that someone wouldn't have to come for a variance. I'm not sure that I've got a position or a inclination on that, but I thought I would just bring that up for consideration tonight.
So, if I'm just going to offer I hope, brief thought about that, which is that our zoning ordinance now meets the minimum standard, with regard to compliance with the state law around ADUs, but we do have the right to make our ordinance more restrictive in certain ways. And, so we can prohibit these detached ADUs. Things to consider are that ADUs fall under a different provision in the zoning ordinance than two-family dwellings. ADUs are allowed by right in any zone that allows single-family dwellings, whereas a two-family house or two-family dwelling is not. So a two-family dwelling requires more land, it requires more frontage. If you allow ADUs in a detached structure, that's more permissive than you're still limited by square footage, but it's more permissive than having a two-family dwelling. The more permissive you are with your land use regulations, for example, smaller lot size, less frontage, more density, the more opportunity you give people, and so you'll get more building and development, which can be a contentious idea. On the one hand, that's really great for housing shortage. People want to live with family, like millennials living with older families. Families having older relatives living with them. It allows more flexibility, but it is going to allow for more development. But strictly not wanting that isn't necessarily friendly to the needs of the property owners, your residents, and need for housing in the region and the best use of the land. How do you make housing accessible for people? So I guess when you're considering this statement, it's a little bit of a value statement around the accessibility of housing and how much more building you want to see. Just things to think about.
All right, well, thank you, Caroline. I wasn't suggesting any certain outcome there. I just happened to be thinking about issues that came before the zoning board over the past year, and that was one of them.
And I don't mean to jump the gun to suggest that that was necessarily, that the planning board was necessarily heading for a change there. But I think, it's worth considering things that the feedback from the zoning board for consideration in these changes. I just want to, I think we should deliberate and consider their suggestions. I just want to make sure that we're understanding as much as we can. We're understanding the potential outcomes, I guess.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts as to zoning ordinance changes? All right. I'm not hearing any. And I believe that we still don't have any members of the public on the call or the workshop. Is that right, Sarah? Or Caroline?
That is currently correct, yes.
Okay. All right. So, looking at I guess if no one objects, I'm going to go through my agenda, which would be, we're not going to talk about any of the changes. To confirm to the public, and the public's not really present, although they may choose to watch this later on, that warrant articles for zoning amendments will be accepted between November 9th and December 9th, 2020. And I think at this point, in regard to any motions to accept revisions, I don't think we're there. So I guess I'm wondering if it might be appropriate to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting, unless someone else believes that we've got a topic on the agenda that we should discuss in regard to this workshop.
One thing I can say, Mr. Chairman, is I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, over the past, I forget how many months, we discussed, Caroline and I discussed some potential changes. And I know I made a list. They're not as substantial as the ones we discussed tonight, but I'm pretty sure I have them. So at some point, I'll probably just end up emailing them out to the whole board, if that's okay.
Well, sure. And I don't, and someone tell me if I'm wrong. I don't believe that we are limited as to what we can propose to the voters based on this meeting tonight. We can come up with other ideas between now and whenever the appropriate deadline is.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Who wants to make that motion?
I will so move, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is there a second?
Seconded, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask everyone whether they're considered a voting meeting a member or not. I don't think it really matters in the workshop, but I'm going to ask everyone for their opinion. So Vice Chairman Haynes, are you yay or nay on the motion to adjourn the meeting? Workshop.
I am yay, Chairman Hinsman.
Thank you. Ms. Kendall, are you yay or nay on the motion to adjourn the workshop?
Yay, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Fogarty, are you yay or nay on the motion to adjourn the workshop?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a yay on that.
All right. Ms. Nastasi, are you yay or nay on the motion to adjourn the workshop?
I'm yay.
And Mr. Knowles, are you yay or nay on the motion to adjourn the workshop?
Yay, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'm also yay, so the motion carries unanimously. I want to thank everyone for taking out time from their busy lives and from family to participate in this tonight. And thank you very much. And I'll see everyone on the first Tuesday in October. And thank you all. Good night.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Good night.